You want to get into sim racing in 2023, but you don't really know what you need or what you can live without. Well, you're lucky to have encountered this video. I'm Marcus and I've been doing sim racing for years. I've been racing everything from a G29 to the setup that I currently use. First of all, we want to talk video games. This is because some wheelbases and other equipment is specifically made for some video games. To find out what games you should invest in, we first of all want to figure out how realistic you want it to be, and second of all, your budget. To help you with this, I have made this wonderful little graph with the realism slider on the bottom. You can see it ranges from arcade to realistic, and the budget on the side from cheap to expensive. As you can see at the far left of the spectrum, I've put games like Forza Horizon. You know, these are the sort of games that mainly focus on the fun. At this end of the spectrum, we also have games like Need for Speed, which again isn't really realistic, but it's really fun to just jump into and mess around with the police and just cause absolute carnage. There's nothing wrong with playing these games, but there's also not a lot in it for you. You know, there's no competitions on any high level. There's not really any multiplayer tournaments for you to compare your skill level to other drivers. And also there's not really a specific skill set you need in these sort of games to be great at them. On the middle of the graph, we have the so-called simcades. These are the games that if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more and compete with other people, this is where you probably want to start. This is the category where we find games like the F1 games by Codemasters or Project Cars 2. These games sacrifice a bit of the realism to focus more on the great gameplay, and they really do achieve that in a pretty good way, if I should say so. You know, if you don't feel like being social and you just want to be consumed by the world of F1, the F1 games have a really interactive career mode that can be completely customized to your skill level and your desires within the F1 world. In this world, your choices will determine where you are on the grid and what AI drivers you end up befriending and what AI drivers you end up rivaling. Overall, this is a really fun experience, and if you're a big F1 fan, I would really recommend giving this a shot. If you, on the other hand, want to be social and get your name out there, the F1 games also have leagues that are hosted by fellow sim racers. These leagues usually drive weekly as well and are usually based on skill level. I mean, who knows? If you become great enough at this, you might end up being the next Jano Upmere, winning huge cash prizes within F1 esports. If you want to get into F1 league racing, you should start locally. You should either search it up on Google or search up on Twitter. There's typically a place where you can join their Discord server where you can start being social and say, hey, I would like to be a part of this. And when you are in the Discord server anyways, I would recommend being active, because that's where you find your contacts, that's where you're social, and that's basically what league racing is about. Even though the F1 games do have these great features, and so does Project Cars 2 and stuff, there are some flaws that you can't get past unless you go into the hardcore simulators. Now I welcome you to the world of hardcore sim racing. This is where you see the most hardcore competitions, as these sims are purely based on your skill level and on the realism. When you do get into this world, it's also mainly based on racing other people. I mean, who buys iRacing to race against AI, let's be honest. As an example, iRacing is by far the most expensive sim, but it's also 98% based on racing other people. The way you're measured in iRacing, as well as ACC, is you're measured by a rating, and this rating you get from beating and racing other people. On the other hand, if you're terrible at driving, you lose your rating by racing other people. It's quite simple, actually. iRacing is also a really good gateway into the real-life racing world. As an example, we had Sebastian Job, who won the World Championship back in 2020, who recently signed a Red Bull development driver deal for the actual F1 team. On top of this, we have some of the Quanda guys who are Porsche factory drivers officially under Porsche. So this is a really good gateway into the real world racing, but of course you need to be at the very top of the game. I would also argue that if you know how to drive iRacing or R-Factor for the sake of it, you will have a way easier time adapting to other simulators because you have that initial driving skill. If you do disagree with me though, I would love to hear your opinion in the comments. I'm always ready for a discussion. Anyways, the point is that if you want to take sim racing seriously and you want to challenge yourself, these are the games that you want to get into. The current choices you have here is of course iRacing, ACC, and R-Factor. I probably forgot one as well, but those are the main three sims you probably want to get into. Now, if you want to start with these, I would highly recommend starting with either iRacing or ACC, and this is because R-Factor doesn't have the same competitive racing against other people as easily as you can get in iRacing and ACC. Now, they have been developing this, but it's still nowhere near the practicality of iRacing and ACC. Once you've determined what games you want to get into based on your commitment and your budget, you want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I know you want to hit it. Now, let's talk gear. There's a lot of different sim racing gear out there, and that's why it's hard choosing exactly what will fill your needs. The main question you need to be asking here is, what can I buy that's within my budget but also doesn't completely suck? Now, I'd say the minimum you need to get a decently enjoyable experience is a G29, and this is because if you go below that in terms of standard, you will probably get something without force feedback or really terrible pedals. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, I think we can start to talk about the better bases. Recently, a lot of new bases have been released, but the G29 has something that they don't. The G29 has stood the test of time. The reason for that is that the G29 is actually a decent product, and it retails pretty cheap at a price of around 200 euros. For arcade games, you probably don't want to get less than this, but you also don't really need more. And this is because games like Forza Horizon and Need for Speed don't really give you enough detail from the car that you need more than that. So I'd confidently say that there's no need to spend more money if you just want to play arcade games, and that, however, is completely your own choice. If you're a little bit more serious and want to jump into the F1 games and stuff, you can still go with the G29 and get a decent experience. However, these games do offer a bit more detail and a bit more in-depth about how the car is currently behaving. Therefore, upgrading slightly won't be a decision you'll regret. The CSL-DD of the new Logitech G Pro direct drives are really good for this genre of games, and this is because they're basically just watered down versions of the more hardcore and way more expensive direct drive wheels. These wheelbases, you get the same detail and the same raw force feedback as you get in the very expensive direct drives, but with 8 Nm of force instead of 25. Of course, you won't get to fight the wheel in the same way, but you'll still get the same raw feeling of racing with a proper direct drive. If that info was confusing to you, basically, if you want something that's better than a G29 but don't want to spend thousands of dollars, get a CSL-DD or Logitech Direct Drive or Thrustmaster for that sake. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk expensive wheelbases. Just to get out of the way, you can of course use your G29s and your Thrustmasters and your Fanatec's here, but full direct drive wheels are by far the best force feedback experience you'll get within sim racing. The detail of the road surfaces and the general car feeling that you get are just on another level in these bases. And when you combine that with the sheer amount of force these bases can put out, you get a feeling nothing else within sim racing can match. A good way I like to think about this is that your Logitechs can of course get you to where you want within sim racing, but direct drive wheels can do it way faster. Now, what direct drive wheels exactly am I talking about? The main wheelbase you probably want to be looking at is the Simucube, and this is because Simucube wheelbases are compatible with most games and have a very large variety of customizations that you can do to get exactly the feeling that you want. Simucube has for a long time kind of had a monopoly on the very best sim racing wheelbases, but other brands have also dipped their feet into the genre as well. Fanatec, as an example, released their DD1 and DD2 a couple of years ago. However, Fanatec's direct drive wheelbases come with, first of all, a very hefty price, and second of all, you still don't get the exact same feeling that you do get in a Simucube. On top of that, I've experienced way too many problems with the Fanatec wheelbases. The place I work have DD1s, and I feel like they're almost daily problems with at least one of the 18 bases we have. Therefore, I would not consider buying a Fanatec DD1 or a DD2 with the current lineup they have. I say that, and I have one, but yeah, it sucks. There are also more bases that have started popping up, like Mosa and Acetec, but I've never really tested these bases, so I don't feel like I can properly speak on them. There is still one base that I want to cover. This one, however, is purely if you're planning on running iRacing and iRacing only. If this is the case though, I would highly recommend you to get the VRS base. This is because the VRS base is specifically designed for iRacing. It runs the same motor as the Simucube base, but just way cheaper. Currently though, this base does have some problems with other games like R-Factor, and it's pretty much not compatible with anything else but iRacing. However, this is a pretty recent product, so that means they're probably going to release some more software updates down the line that will allow you to do this. Whew, that was a mouthful. Let's talk rigs. Aluminium profile rigs are the only rigs within sim racing that are really worth buying if you ask me. They're pretty cheap. As an example, SimLab are offering the cheapest aluminium rig for about 300 euros. Other than that, they're the most sturdy type of rig you can have, and they have a shit ton of customizability to get your exact seating position. If you're looking for something without any flex at all, I would recommend looking into rigs like the P1X or the Pro Sim Rig PSR1 rig that I have. When you're driving these rigs, you won't notice any flex at all. Of course, if you're trying to throw over the balcony or screw a screw loose, it will happen, but I really wouldn't recommend that. Anyways, as I said, if you're not looking to get an aluminium profile rig, you might as well throw your wheelbase onto a table and just rock that. Other than that, there are monitor setups, individual reels, you know, racing seats and PC specs, but this video has to come to an end at some point as well. If you want to know more about all of these things, I really recommend that you subscribe to the channel, as I plan on doing individual videos on all of these topics. I hope you enjoyed. I've been Marcus, and I'll see you in the next one.